Hi, I'm Louise from The Whole Dog.
And I'm Louise from Wandering with Dogs. This is the third episode in our lead walking mini-series, and we're talking about the walk itself. There's so much conflicting information out there, so we're giving you our take on what we think makes a good dog walk, so you both get what you need from your time outside.
We certainly had fun recording it, and we hope you enjoy it. Hello. Today we are going to talk about the dog walk. So we've been doing a little bit of a series on loose lead walking and what that looks like, and the many, many parts of it, both human and dog. But this is one that comes up a lot, isn't it? What is a dog walk?
Exactly. What is it? Who came up with the idea that your dog's exercise should look like on lead for an hour, whatever, half an hour, whatever, walking around the streets? Who thought that was a good idea?
I don't know where it came from. I can only assume in my brain it was as the world got busier and more people had dogs in their lives, is my guess. I don't know whether that's true,
Right.
but that's my feelings towards it. Because if you think about, like, even when I was a kid, there was plenty of dogs locally that just floated about. They were just around. There was one particular dog that funny story. I was maybe about 7 or 8, really wanted a dog of my own at this point. And there was this local stray dog, or I thought it was a stray dog, that used to melt out the streets. Yeah, I thought it was a stray dog. So you can see where this is going. And I'd made friends with, I can't remember its name. I think its actual name was Casper. I'd probably given it another name. I had a dog lead and I had a collar. And then I got a dog.
To go in it.
No, I had no dog of my own. We had a family dog, but I had no dog of my own. So caught up with this dog, put the collar on the dog, the lead on the collar, and tried to take the dog home. Wasn't overly successful. My mum and dad opened the front door to me being dragged down the street by said dog, who I just wanted to love me and keep it safe. When actually it had a home, it was perfectly well looked after, and it was not my dog that I just tried to kidnap.
Why have you never told me that before?
I don't know, it just popped into my head there because I was thinking about, like, this dog in particular used to just wander around. He would just be around. But I just assumed 8-year-old me that this dog needed my help and that I was to love him forever. And yeah, I wanted to take him on a walk. And he didn't want that. He didn't want that. I don't think his people wanted me to do that either. So I was in big trouble for that one because I tried to bring a random dog to my house that actually belonged to someone. But there was a few dogs locally that they just milled around.
Well, now that you've
Just
said
did their
that,
thing.
our dog, so I'm talking 30 years ago now, our King Charles Spaniel used to just take herself out the back gates, through the court that we lived beside, and down the street, on the grass verge, up until the end of, so we had barriers in front of the house because we lived on beside a main road.
Oh,
And the dog would take herself down to the end of the barriers before the the opening of the barriers to cross the road. She would stop there. She would take herself back up the grass verge, back through the cut, and back into the house.
Yeah.
Like, I would never dream of doing anything like that now.
Oh, not now.
Never.
But I think the world has changed in that regard, like in this country anyway. Obviously, if we look further afield, there's plenty of village dogs and, you know, dogs that just live their lives freely. But I think particularly here, if we look at, like, how busy our towns and cities are, it's not the way that we can live with dogs anymore.
No. So do you think
I
that's
guess
where
the dog walk became a thing.
yeah? So
I don't know. Not
we,
sure.
the human, will facilitate your pootling around and sniffing and meandering. But in doing that, we, the human, have gone, but you'll do what I want you to do. We'll go
Yeah, I
where
think that's where
I want you to
things
go.
have gotten a bit muddled.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's went from like those dogs that had probably quite a bit of freedom
And choice.
and
I think that's a
choice.
massive one, isn't it? The choice in where they go.
Hmm.
And I think that feeds into so much.
Yeah,
Um,
I think about it a lot. Like, I don't do a huge amount of street walking with my dogs. Blue, very minimal because of the car chasing thing.
mm,
Um, Luna, on occasion in the week, we will go for a little walk, and I always find myself going, "Is this the way we went the last time? Like, how often have we been this way lately? Should we change it up a bit? Should we go this direction?" Like, I do consciously think about it,
mm,
but going back, like, I don't think I ever thought about it from that perspective. Like, what's my dog getting out of this? It was just,
mm,
you need to go, like, my mum and dad were like, you need to go walk the dog. The dog needs a walk. Go take the dog a
mhm,
walk. So I would
mhm.
I would perform the action of walking the dog, but especially street walking, I didn't really think about what she was getting out of it or they were getting out of it. I didn't think about it
No, I
a
certainly
lot.
did. It was a, we need to be out. I don't know. It would differ. Um, I'm thinking particularly, like a few years ago with Casper,
Mm,
30 minutes, 45 minutes, and that dictated where we went. We went in different directions,
yeah,
but that was pretty much my sole consideration, the
yeah,
length of time we were out the house.
yeah. Not the type of experience that he got out of it.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And I think it's something like I question myself about it a lot, but like I say, I didn't before. And I think once you start to look at it from that different perspective and think about the different parts of a walk, the elements of a walk, the fulfillment that your dog's getting out of that time out of the house. Like I very rarely say walk, I'm going to walk the dog
Hmm.
anymore because I don't like that. So like it almost feels like a service.
Yes, yeah. You it's almost like a tick box exercise, that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
feeling.
Whereas I'll say I'm going out with Luna. Me and Luna
Yes.
are going out.
Mm,
No, I'm walking Luna.
mm,
Because that kind of comes back to, I think it was the first episode we spoke about like walking with your dog instead of walking your dog. Like I want that to be a group activity, like a team activity, not a I'm doing this because I have to, because that's what I should do.
mhm. That whole idea of we need to be out because you need to have physical exercise,
Yeah.
whereas a walk is about so much more than physical exercise.
Mhm. Yeah. If you think about it, and this is something that always gets me, we control everything. We are the
Mm,
gatekeepers of everything. We are the gatekeepers of what kind of experience they have, what kind of day that they have. We are controlling all of that. Of course we are, with the humans with the bigger brains. Like that is our responsibility. But if you think about it from a human perspective, if you only got out the house, say once or twice a day, and I'm not saying you don't do anything else within your home environment in that day, but if you only left that building twice a day and you had no say in it, how would that make us feel? Obviously,
mm.
we can't give our dogs complete control because
No.
the human world doesn't allow for that. Um, although sometimes I think dogs would make better decisions if we did just give them the control of
Mhm,
the life. Um, but it's kind of looking at taking it apart and thinking about, what does this mean to me? What does this
mm.
mean to my dog? you're gonna get questions. It's gonna hurt your brain. I've done a lot of brain hurting to myself today. And I'm doing it to myself again now. But questioning what that looks like and why it looks like that and who said it should.
Yeah, yeah. When you were talking there, what came to mind for me was having your dog walking in a set position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And whether that's by your left or your right, that whole left and right thing doesn't matter. For when we're talking particularly heel work, but we're not talking heel work. This is just a general loose lead dog walk. Can you imagine? See, I in my head I equate that to somebody putting their hands on my shoulders and kind of telling me that I can move left and right. When I stop, it's just, instantly I just feel tension. I feel uptight. And it just doesn't feel pleasant. And I think not giving your dog choice, freedom, just to be able to relax, or like, as you were saying, make decisions about which way they go. And on that front, your dog is not being dominant or being the alpha if they decide they would like to just stop for a little minute and just sniff a leaf, or if they would like to go off to the right. That's not them dictating to you that they're the boss. That is
Or if they dare
purely,
step in front of you.
yes, how very dare they. That is that is purely them going, oh, I just want to check that out. That smells really nice, doesn't it? I just want to kind of go that way. Or something's just caught my eye. Can we just stop and have a little minute? Thanks very much.
Well, if you think about it in human terms, like I was sitting last night and I drank too much energy juice, so I wasn't tired. And I was like, oh, I want something to watch. And I was like flicking through all the TV subscriptions, trying to find something to watch. And I was going every which direction and I was looking at descriptions and I was moving to the next one, trying to find the thing that I wanted that caught my attention. And I always think about walks a bit like that for dogs. It's like Netflix home screen. They're gaining information, they're finding out what's interesting to them. They're learning about the environment that they live in, who's been there before them, what's been happening that day. Like, we do that in a human way all the time. Like, how many of us just sit and just scroll to gather information or to gain a pleasant, fulfilling experience from watching a video or reading a post or an email or looking at a picture or whatever. But our dogs don't have those things in their life, obviously, because they're dogs. They don't need them. But not that we need them either. There's another question. But it's their enriching experience in their day, that time out of the house. That's their time to sit and scroll through their smell channel, whatever you want to call it, and gather information and find out about stuff. Obviously, it's different from us,
Just be
be a dog.
outside in a different environment. Yeah.
And especially now we're coming into the summer, we want to spend more time outside together. The weather's nice, even in Scotland, so that's a bonus.
How many of you like to just sit and people watch?
Oh, I love people watching.
And take in where you are. And I've been thinking about the dog walk quite a bit this week. And it's when you ask your dog to walk in a set position for 30 or 40 minutes or however long it is, they're looking forward, they're in that position, you're not giving them the opportunity to just stop and just look and sniff and just take the world in.
Yeah. And there's definitely a place for more structured walking. Of course there is. Like if you were walking down a busy street or you ended up in a crowd or whatever you can come across, of course there is a time that you're like, I need you to be more with me than the environment.
Mm.
But I think the proportion of that should be a lot less. Like, one of the things that we come across a lot, and it's not a criticism, it's, you know, puppies or young adult dogs, and the humans want that loose lead walking the entire way of their walk.
Mm.
And that's such a big thing to ask for. Like, it's absolutely possible you can teach it, but why do you need it?
Well, that was my question. Why would you want that? Why would you want your dog to? I think it's a good foundation to have.
Yeah.
That
It's
you
not a
know that
criticism, like I said,
no,
it's
no,
an
that
observation.
The history of, you know, being rewarded by your side, or you know, whatever that looks like, that it's a good foundation. But why would you want your dog? Well, because it to me it would make it easier for the human, doesn't it?
It does. It does. But is it
You
that
know
at
that.
the expense of the experience of the dog?
Yes, yes. But it doesn't have to be like that.
No.
There is a way where you can both human and dog get the walk that you want, both have a nice time outside of the house, and get what you need.
Yeah. I'm sure I mentioned this on one of the podcast episodes. I can't remember which one now, but not long after getting Luna, I fell pregnant. And I used to feel at that point I was sore. I was getting more round and unbalanced. And she was a young border collie puppy. And I will be 100% honest with you. I did not have the energy
Mm.
to be loose lead training and teaching. I just did not have it within me. And I found myself at times getting angry with her because the strain on my body at that point, because, you know, I was going through some things, I just didn't have the available brain space to deal with that, or the physical ability to deal with that. And I made one of the best decisions of my life through that. I went onto Amazon and I bought a training lead that was about 10 meters long, and it was the best thing I've ever done, and I've never looked back. I always say to my students, and I think they can be a bit surprised, I don't ask my dogs to loose lead walk. Very rarely does my life require it. Very rarely. There is times, 100%, but that was a game changer for me because do you know what the surprising thing? See, when I gave her space, she stopped pulling me.
Well, what's the, you know, if somebody pushes, you know, I know it's kind of the inverse of what we're talking about, but when somebody pushes you, what's your natural reaction? It's not to just go, it's to push back, isn't
Yeah,
it?
you need to
And
balance
it's
yourself to
yeah,
rebalance
yeah, and it's the
you.
same with, you know, if that lead goes tight, your instinct is to pull away from it, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think because especially at that time in my life, right, I was bumbling along. There was no gracefulness about me. I was bumbling. My feet and my ankles were so swollen. I was wearing flip-flops, right? This is where we were at. So I was not a graceful human. And I couldn't keep up with her. I couldn't. Um, and the relief that we both felt,
Mm.
because if I looked at her stride length at that age, like, she was leggy, she was young, she had energy. I was not leggy. I did not have energy. We were quite incompatible at that point in my life, in her life. But just by letting her move freely,
Mm.
I got to move freely. Of course, there's considerations. I'm not just saying stick your dog in a long line and just let them go.
Mhm.
I knew Luna wouldn't walk into traffic. I was very aware of what was going on, the distractions around us in the environment. It wasn't just here's all this space, do what you want with it, because it was a lot of street walking at that point. But even like just that bit more space, and I'm not talking like 20 meters of space, like some of your big long lines. I'm just talking a little bit more space for her to move properly. Oh, the difference. It is one of the best things I've ever done for myself and my dog. Ever. And I'm looking forward to that day for Blue too. We're not there yet, but that is the end goal for us. It's not to have him pinned by my side. We're working on heel work. That's great. We're doing all this sort of fancy stuff. But that's not going to come into our normal walks.
No, that's for a very specific situation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. For me, it is.
Yeah. So what the long line for me does is just, it removes those moments of tension, and then it just allows your dog to just go, this is because they're not being yanked by the collar or even feeling their harnesses being pulled. And I think, I'm sure I mentioned it, I don't know if it was on the last episode or the one before, about that whole mindset that your dog's in being so important. And when that is quote unquote right, then your walks are just generally so much better.
They need to be able to move. Can you imagine walking being held on to or dragged about? I see it so much and I despair. I saw a woman just literally almost maneuver her dog up, just started moving it about with a lead and a collar. And I'm like, that's a little life on the end of that, and you are so disconnected. And I'm not saying this woman didn't love her dog. I'm sure she does.
But in that
like,
moment,
I was so disconnected. Kira was telling me actually the other day she'd watched a woman with a little small dog, can't remember what breed she'd said, on an extendable lead, and she lifted the lead up and put it behind her head to bring the dog back.
I'm sorry, what now?
Lifted the long line, the extendable lead, so it was like extended. So instead of, I guess, putting the brake on, just maneuver it above her head to create tension.
Okay. Interesting.
And I'm not judging anybody, but I'm like, why is that your choice? Like,
in
what
that
made you do
moment,
that? I'm
yeah,
curious.
yeah.
Enlighten me. Were you just not thinking? Is that what you normally do? Yeah, I don't know. And I'm sure I've done stuff with leads and stuff in the past that, at the moment don't spring to my mind, but I handle my equipment that's attached to my dog, which is a living being, so consciously. I don't know if that's my horse background or if that's dogs. I don't know. But I feel like every time I do anything with that piece of equipment that's between me and the dog on the other end of it, it's intentional.
Yeah.
Nothing's done without even a slight bit of thought. There's always something behind it.
And again, I've said this before. The lead for me is a piece of it's safety. It's a piece of equipment to ensure my dog's safety. It's not something that I move my dog with.
No.
I move my dog with my body. Yeah, and she comes with me. So for the people who are listening to this and thinking, oh my God, I can't get a 10-meter long line because my dog is just going to bolt and get to the end of it.
Yeah.
And my arm is literally going to come out of its socket. What would you say to those people?
I might get eaten alive for this, but you'd be surprised. You think that? I'm not saying go try it out in a main road and give them every single bit of space in the world. Absolutely, categorically not. This piece of advice is something that I've spoken about over the years, but I've literally seen it in the last little while change so many of my students and their dogs' lives. I'd love to get a couple of them on to talk to us about it down the line. One of them actually sent me a message last night with a video of their walk with both of their dogs. One is a Spaniel, one is a German Shepherd mix. If you're listening, I know you listen. I'm talking about you. Aye. But they were just instead of getting their arms pulled out their sockets, they were toddling along together. They were both getting to go back for their sniffs and do their things. And I'm just like, this is it.
Mm. Mm.
Like, simple change of equipment. I don't love extendable leads. I don't think they're the devil. Some trainers really go after them. I've
I
got
think
my
they've
own
got the
specific
place, haven't they?
reasons. Yeah, or
Yeah.
definitely. Like handling
Yeah.
a long line is something that I'm actually going to do a video on for missions and actually do a class around, because it is, I don't think about it, but I've had horses in my life for years. So using pieces of equipment like this, it feels natural to me. I don't remember how it felt to not feel like I knew what I was doing with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And extendable leads can replace that feeling of not knowing where to gather the line and how to let it move out and in. But I find with me, I am so much more conscious of what I'm doing if I have to manage the equipment.
That's a
Whereas your
really
extendable
valid
lead, it
point.
goes out and in and out and in and out and in on its own.
Mm.
So for me, that's my preference. I don't like the bulky handles of a
No, I don't
extendable
either.
lead. I can't hold my lead how I like to with something like that. But even, having your dog with an extendable lead, if you've got one, give them a bit more space.
Yeah.
A bit more space.
I
Yeah.
don't like the fact that with your extendable, if it's locked, and if the dog's free to move all the time, then there is tension on
Yes, there's always
your
tension.
harness.
Yeah.
Whereas with a long line, you can relax that lead, so there is
Yeah.
nothing pulling
Yeah.
on the harness.
Yeah.
So just as a side note, if you are going to use a long line, please use a harness with it.
Yes. Yes. But also I think with extendable leads, the wire's so thin. It gives me the absolute fear. And I'm sure it can hold a decent weight. And then I had a really horrible moment down the beach one day. A woman had dropped her extendable lead and her dog was fleeing, absolutely fleeing, because the handle was chasing it and it was
Oh wow.
terrified. Kira managed to stand on the handle to stop it. But with a long line, if you drop it, there's no scary bit at the end
Yeah.
chasing them down. It's all these things to consider, and it's doing what's right for you and thinking about, the pros and cons of every piece of equipment out there. Like, what's it designed for? How does it work? How is that going to make me feel? How's it going to feel on my dog? Long lines, there's pros and cons to it as well. Bioethane ones don't soak up water, which is great, but I don't like the feeling of them personally. I don't love it.
You see,
Whereas I've got a
I
lot of friends that
really,
absolutely love them.
yeah, I really like the feeling of them.
Yeah, I
However,
don't.
if you're using them, and you do let them go, I've used them before and they've
Yep.
been on grass, wet grass, and I've just let them go. They're not great when you need to stand on them.
Yeah,
That friction isn't there as
that's a
well as
good
it is with
point.
some other fabrics.
No, that is a really good point.
Yeah,
I'm toying
but
with the idea of one at the moment. I'm not committed yet
yeah,
because I don't love the feeling. They do get wet, the fabric ones. They do gather water and dirt and mud, but I just put on a pair of gloves. I wear a pair of cheap horse riding gloves. Problem solved, in my opinion.
yeah.
So it's,
So there's the your bog standard fabric lead, isn't there?
yeah,
Which is at the cheaper end of the spectrum, and those are the ones that if they get wet, oh my god,
yeah.
they are weighty, aren't they? But there's the ones that I know you've got one of these, and I have as well. The ones that have got grippy,
Yeah, I
what do you
like my
call
hand
it?
grip.
Rubber grippy stuff in the middle.
It kind of feels like that material that makes gloves grippy. It's
Yeah,
very similar.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah. They don't tend to hold as much water.
No.
if you're going through grass and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So again,
But
pros and cons to
aye,
different.
it's finding what works for you, and like we said, we're not encouraging you to go stick your dog on a 20-meter long line and go walk down the street.
No, no.
But what I see a lot of, and actually this happens on both sides of the scale for small and big dogs. Smaller dogs, like our Daxies, Pomeranians, Jack Russells, even those dogs that are pretty close to the ground. They're then on a 1.5-meter lead, and most of it's in the air.
Oh, see, I've not thought about that
Most of
either.
their space to move is between them and their human. If their human happens to be tall, which I am not, but even still, most of that tension is going up.
Yeah.
Their movement
Mhm.
sphere isn't very great. Their
Mm.
range of motion to move. Then we've got our bigger dogs, so say like our German Shepherds or working line labs, Dalmatians. These are just a few students that are springing to my mind. They're big dogs. If you watch their stride length and how much ground they would cover, that 1.5-meter lead isn't going to last very long, space-wise.
Mm-hmm.
We work with a lot of reactivity, both from the emotion of excitement, frustration, overwhelm, to the fear, anxiousness, worry side. And I think for me, with Luna, if Luna has more space to move and decide, the less likely she is to react.
Yeah.
And I've seen that to be true with many of my students' dogs by giving the dog more space. And again, not saying put it in a 20-meter long line and see what happens, but just giving them space that's proportionate to who they are, the size that they are, the breed that they are. Your 5-meter long lines seem to be quite a popular choice with our students. They're not massively long, but a standard lead length somebody decided was 1.5 meters, no matter whether it was a Chihuahua or a Great Dane, it's 1.5 meters. Whereas, 5 meters, regardless of the size of dog you've got, they're gonna have space, and you're not gonna have, so much to hold that it then becomes overwhelming for you.
Yeah. You're giving your dog options, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're giving them the choice to make better decisions, because how many dogs do you know that actually want to react? They,
No.
for whatever reason it is, they're, and kind of removing that need by giving them another option in that they can move a different place. They're not stuck because of the length of the lead. They haven't got any options.
Yeah.
It just helps all around.
Yeah, it does. And if we look at what does a dog need when they go out with us? I mean, for me, the biggest one that stands out is that time to explore the environment. There's plenty of times that I'm on my forward trajectory and Luna will just go back the way. She'll just leave and go back. But she's got the freedom and the space to go, oh, I missed that. I'm going to go back to that. Whereas if she was on a shorter lead, my arm would be yanked back, because sometimes she's just like, this is the thing I'm going to sniff. See you later. And she's probably not one of the sniffier dogs that I know, because her genetics isn't really her top tier thing, although she is a dog and sniffing is very important. But she's got that freedom to make that decision without almost having to ask me for permission or make it happen herself. She can just choose to do that in that moment if that's what she wants to do, and I'll stop and I'll wait for her and then let her catch up.
I think for me, the dog walk is about time out of the house. It's not about, it's not about set distance. It's not about a set thing. We will, we'll change stuff. We'll do a little bit of training. We'll do a little bit, and when I say a little bit of training, I probably mean 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Tops. If that, in some cases. What you were just saying there, Ember, she's a Vizsla, so she is a gun dog. She is bred to use her nose above pretty much everything else. We went out this afternoon, and she, from the corner of our street, she tracked, so her nose was to the ground, and she followed a scent on the ground. And it's fascinating to watch just how she works, and she's just following and sniffing and sniffing and sniffing. And I had to keep up with that because she has to be walked on a short lead at the minute. I can't give her that freedom because of her hip. But if I had it done, that would have been so much easier for me because I would have just let the long line out, just kept going.
Yeah.
And then when she'd finished, just reel that back in again. But instead, little Louise was little Louise's legs were going like the
along
behind my dog.
Has Ember found it a change from having that much freedom and that normal way of things for her
That's
to
hard,
things
isn't it?
being more restricted?
Because our walks, we very rarely did only dog walks. All of our
this is quite unusual for you.
Yeah, all of our time out the house was we'd drive somewhere and she'd be off lead pretty much all the time. So it is a complete flip. So yeah, it's hard to say that one. She's coping. You wouldn't think there was anything wrong as such.
No.
But
like
yeah.
Luna very rarely gets less than 2 meters, I'd say, is probably the least that I ask her to walk. Luna has pain issues in her back, in her neck. So I'm very conscious that I don't put tension on there, because even though she's wearing the best harness for her, if there is tension on that lead, it is going to hurt her. And because the adrenaline, when she does decide that she's going for some reason, usually there's an adrenaline fear element to when she's decided to do that. So she's not feeling the pain in the moment, but I know she's going to feel it later. We went for a dog walk with some of our students to a local woodland, and I was anxious. I was anxious. Luna was also a little bit overwhelmed, so asking her for her loose lead cues in that moment was never going to work for either of us. We were on a motorway. Actually, we were on whatever the next step up from a motorway is. I don't know, like the Autobahn or something. That's where we were. And she pulled me like a train. And we were going down a hill, and it wasn't a steep hill, but I could feel her pulling against me to balance herself, and then I was having to pull against her because I was like, I'm going to deck it down this hill after you. And I was like, I cannot let you go. Like, I can't fall over. And Kira was kind of leading the group because I had decided to bring Luna with me. And she pulled us over and she's like, let's have a little break here. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, a break. I can give my dog space. I can let her move. Because I don't get pulled by her. Blue, I do. And it's very minimal because we don't do walks like that. So I don't really feel the impact of it. But I was so relieved when that group stopped at that point, because I was like, oh my God, that was horrible. Because we just don't have those moments in our walks very often. It's really, really rare. So I was like, that was a lot. Didn't enjoy that. She's looking at me like, what was that? Didn't like that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but you kind of, you decided that. I was just an anchor in that moment.
That's for those of you who haven't listened to the previous episodes, we describe motorways as being places where you wouldn't take a learner driver.
Yes.
Like being the equivalent of your dog's how would you describe that for the dog? The dog where your dog would struggle the most.
Yeah. They're not in a headspace in that environment to be able to learn or to participate in learning that's still ongoing. And usually we decipher a motorway by, are the ears on? Can they do known behaviours really fluently? Are they engaged with us? Are they paying attention to us? Are they eating? Are they sniffing? Generally when we end up on a motorway, they're not doing the things that we know they can do. So it's an indication that something here in this environment means that we're off the track that they're currently on. So we lower criteria, we lower our expectations, or we get them out of there.
Yeah.
Whichever, really.
Yeah.
And Luna was on something other than a motorway because that was a first for us for a long time, in that sort of environment. So I wasn't going to ask her to loose lead walk with me because A, she would have really struggled to do that, and B, in that moment with the feelings that she was going through, that would not have been fair for me to ask that.
Yeah. And do you know what? It's all right, isn't it? It's all right to have
I needed a
walks like
breather.
that.
I was absolutely roasting and I was done in.
Yeah.
But I wasn't
there is
angry at
no
her for it or upset at her for it. I wasn't embarrassed by her. My dog was just like, this is too much for me. And then after that, we settled into the walk and everything carried on fine. But just in that moment, she was like, I can't do this. But I wasn't upset at her for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a nice reminder to me for my students when they're getting dragged, you know, when we've entered a motorway for them. You know, there's plenty of time that I'll go over to a student and I can see they're needing a break and I will take over because it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not from a place of you can't do this, so let me take your dog. It's just here, have a minute. And then go again when you're ready. Just take
we
a
all need
second.
those, don't we? We all need those moments, you know, whether it's in life generally or specifically when you come to your dog when you're in situations like that.
Yeah,
Just
and I
going
think
back
that's
to
where a lot of loose lead frustration comes in because it doesn't meet our expectation. So I challenge you to look at what is your expectation and why is it that?
Yes, absolutely. Just going back to what you were saying about Luna and giving her that, you know, the length of lead that you do. If you were, you know, given the fact that she does have pain, if you were to make her walk on a shorter lead, she wouldn't be able to change her gait, do anything about her movement in order to make herself feel more comfortable.
Yep. And she would also be a million times more reactive to things in the environment because it's hurting her.
Yes, because of that state of mind that she's in.
Yep.
And yeah.
And it's, you know, there's no set way to go out with your dog. But if you're experiencing frustrations, asking yourselves these sorts of questions and exploring it deeper, like I made that decision with Luna with the long line out of frustration, out of pain on my part. I didn't really think about it anything beyond that, I don't think. I think I knew she wasn't having a good time because that was quite evident because she was pulling and huffing and she was in a harness, she wasn't on a collar, but it's changed my life for her and our walks together massively. I don't know why you chose to walk long line life with Ember.
Well, I started with Casper, so he has a 5 meter long line. I think it was just because I made that decision before I knew anything about the whole dog training thing. And I think it was purely, I think I'd gone through let's try this lead, let's try this lead, let's try this harness, let's try this. And I'd gone, oh, that's a long lead. Well, we'll just try it. We'll just give it a go.
Yeah.
And then kind of gone, oh, well, that means that he can stop and sniff. I can keep walking.
Yeah.
And then he catches up to me and overtakes me, stops at the next nipple. It's just that, it just gives that that balance to the walk.
With Blue in the beginning, I did walk him on a shorter lead, shorter than I would like, because I was genuinely scared he was going to fling himself into traffic.
Yeah, because that was you know, he's a rescue. He has got.
You've got issues, mate.
I didn't want to use that word.
I got issues.
But yeah. yeah, that's a case of safety,
Yeah.
isn't it? And
But
being sensible.
what I started doing though, because what also worried me was switching the lead from the long line, from the short lead
Right.
to the long line.
Yeah, when you're out and
Um,
about.
yeah,
Mm,
but now I just keep the same lead. So it
mm,
serves two functions for me. He gets his freedom when we're at a more freedom appropriate spot, but I can also bring that lead in and make it the length that I need to keep him safe, but also give him a bit of space.
mhm.
But the amount of comments I've had lately, oh, that's a long lead you've got there. Oh, what you doing? Are you training your dog? Um, and I'm like, if I was holding an extendable lead, you wouldn't even question that, and it's probably about the same length.
Mhm, mhm,
But honestly, the amount of comments that
mhm.
I've had, like
Right.
kids, adults, both, like it just seems so unusual to people, whereas to
But
me,
it is.
it's
Uh,
normal.
Other than you and Kira, who
Yeah, I
do
was
you
gonna say,
know? Like, where have you seen anybody walking their dog on a longer than
all
normal?
my students. Only recently, to be fair. But before then, I don't see it out and about
No,
very
I don't.
often,
I've
unless we're
never seen.
in the company of our students.
Mm,
Many of them will bring their dogs on their long leads now to our social walks. And, handling skills around that is getting much easier for people. The dogs that react to other dogs or people or whatever, are becoming a lot less reactive. That maybe isn't the sole reason, but it's definitely improving for
yeah,
everybody.
it's got to be a
Um,
contributing factor.
yeah, oh, definitely. But it's so nice to see. But it's
Mm.
funny that people have questioned my choice so openly, and I never really know what to say back. I can't remember what I've said back in the past, but I'm always like, why do you feel the need to comment on that? But
Yeah, and why do you think 1.2 meters or 1.5 meters is normal and is acceptable, and
Mhm.
that this is so odd.
Yeah, it always comes down to looking at what you need from the dog walk.
Mm, mm,
But what does your dog need, and how can that be balanced between, I think we said in one of the other podcasts about in this little series, someone who lives in the city centre of Glasgow or Doncaster is going to need a more connected walk in certain situations, I would say.
yeah.
I don't like cities. I barely like towns, so it's not somewhere that I tend to frequent my time. Um, but I know that if I lived somewhere more built up or more city-like, I would need to adjust the way that I do things. I'm not
Yeah.
saying I would do it differently, but I would need to look at it differently.
Mm,
So there is always your own individual circumstances are going to bring, questions on how you do that
mm.
and how that fits in with what you need. Like, I don't give Luna our full 7.5 meters if we're walking to the vets through Air High Street. I don't do that because that's not clever for many
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah, but that's where your loose lead walking,
Yep.
your heel work comes in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where you can ask your dog to be
Yeah.
in a set position and stay there
Yeah.
because that's safest for them.
It's just popped into my brain. Like, I don't know if this is relevant, but the rise of reels and TikToks, and if you get into the dog training reels and things, you're gonna come across that very formal style heel work. And it's probably gonna be a German Shepherd or a Malinois and a buff looking man doing some fancy moves, which is lovely. That is what I aspire to, not to be the buff looking man, but that fancy, intricate heel work with my dog. But that's not what I'm going to do on the walk to the vet.
No.
And I'm sure he doesn't either. He probably takes his helicopter. Who knows? But like, it looks beautiful and it looks so
It looks
perfected and it's
it looks very
amazing.
impressive, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I love watching that sort of stuff. I would love to know how they go for a walk with their dog.
Oh, that's a good
What do
question.
they do?
What does their dog walk look like?
And I don't mean the little TikTok reels and things that are
No,
posed. I
no.
mean like their actual time together
Actual,
with Joel and
yeah,
Sue.
actual real life. Do you think they do? Or do you
I
think
don't
their
know.
dog spends a lot of time doing training? Mm.
I mean, our dogs spend a lot of
Question.
time doing training too, but they still get time to be a dog and to just poodle about and tiddle
Yeah.
about.
Mm. Yeah.
But yeah, that's where we sat on the dog walk. I
Yeah.
don't even like calling it the dog walk or walking the dog. Being out
Time.
together, walking with
Yeah.
each other, time together,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's what it's about, in my opinion.
Mhm.
You know, don't get me wrong, there's times that I'm like, we need to go because you need some exercise, and I have very little time, and this is what we need to do now. There's plenty of that on occasion, but I'd like to think the majority of the time that my dogs spend out of the house fulfills them just as much as it does me spending time with them.
Yes. Yeah.
And I keep my requests to a minimum. Lots to think about. I'd love to know what everybody else's thoughts are when they listen to this one.
I would.
To know.
Because
Any comments are welcome.
yeah. And if you haven't listened to episode 1 and 2 in this series, go back and listen because there's
Yeah.
information in there that will help you as well.
Yeah, because it all plays into this part, really, doesn't it? Like all the bits that we've spoken about
Mm.
is going to have a wider impact on that time you spend outside with your dog while you're connected with the piece of equipment.
Mm. Mm.
And don't try and steal random stray dogs. Not a good
Please
idea.
don't. No, it's not great.
No, don't do that. I was in big trouble. Can't believe I've
Yeah.
never told you that story.
No. I wonder how many more we've got those
Oh,
in the bag.
it gets brought up every so often. Even as an adult, we still get reminded of the time I tried to steal a dog. I was about 8, so, you know, I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
But we leave it there. I think
We
we've
shall
given
leave it
people something
there.
to think about. My brain is also thinking, and it's hurting.
Mm.
And I need to go walk the dog because it's starting to become a little bit feral.
Do you need to walk the dog? Or do you need to spend time outside with your dog?
I said that deliberately, but yes, I'm going to go and spend some time out the house with my dogs
Right.
and
You
enjoy the
enjoy that then.
sunshine. And now it's cooled down a little bit because us Scottish folk are like, oh, they're that warm all of a sudden. Um, never happy. But yeah, I don't know. We'll maybe see if we can get some people on because I
Yeah,
think that would be really nice.
I think
I
that
would
would be a
love
nice
that.
follow-up. Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of open up the chat a bit to the
Yeah.
people that we help and the people that are having these questions that we've already questioned and we'll question again
We shall.
and again.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right, friends, I shall see you in the next one.
We
Any
shall.
comments, fire them at us. Smashing. I'll speak to you later.
See you later.
Bye.